Crystal. So lately I've been getting a lot of questions, and especially after my Cherry Street Cosmetics review about application for loose pigments and loose eyeshadows. I've been getting a lot of questions about their blendability because they're loose. Some people have expressed that it's harder to blend because there's a lot of fallout, and some people have expressed that they just have a hard time keeping it on their eyelids because they can't get the color to actually stick. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of like a demo / tutorial on some really good ways that work for me to put on loose shadows and loose powders. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what they are. I'm also going to show you how to blend them and why we're going to be using transition colors. You guys have heard me mention transition colors a lot in a lot of my tutorials, and I love transition colors. I think that they're very important, and it helps that color stay on, and any type of shadow that you may lose will be covered by that transition. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I have two products by the same company. They're MAC. Here I have a MAC Pigment, and right here I have a MAC Quad with pressed powders in them. So pressed powders look like this. They have been put together and pressed into a little pan so that you can sweep your brush across and apply them. Pigments have a very loose texture, as you can see here. Now, there are also such things as loose eyeshadows that are not pigments. This is a coastal scent color. And there's also such things as a pressed powder, such as this really deep color right here, and a couple of the deep colors in the Naked palette that do have fallout but are not considered pigment. So what is the difference? So a pigment is what is put into your eyeshadow to make that eyeshadow's color really rich, really vibrant. This would be the true pigment in, let's say, a dark purple shadow, or this would be the true color pigment in, let's say, a color such as Steamy by MAC. These are obviously different companies, but I'm just saying you would put this type of a colored pigment into this type of a color shadow to really bring out that color. However, pressed shadows most of the time are much less intense than a pigment, and sometimes eyeshadows that are much more pigmented or have a higher amount of an actual pigment can tend to have some more fallout in them. You actually see this with a lot of the darker shadows because they do use a little bit more pigments to get that deep color. So here are 4 different types of brushes that I have, and I'm going to show you the best brushes to apply pigments because one of the questions was, each time I apply pigments I have a hard time blending them because you keep getting fallout. So out of these brushes, this one is an Urban Decay All Over Shadow Brush. You can see that it's pretty thin. Right here we have by e.l.f. a blending brush with a little bit of a tapered hair bundle. Right here we have a Revlon shadow brush. I kind of call this one a multi-use brush because while it is good to place shadow, it's also got that fluffiness to it so you can blend as well. And then the next brush is actually one of my favorites, and it's only $1. It's an e.l.f. brush, and they call it a shadow brush. But if you look at the difference between this shadow brush and the Urban Decay shadow brush, the e.l.f. one has a much shorter and stiffer hair bundle than the Urban Decay. And it's much more densely packed all the way up into the top than the Urban Decay one. I actually really like this one to apply pigments. This one I actually do use as a packing brush. A packing brush is best to apply pigments or a shadow with a lot of fallout because it's much easier to pack it on in small amounts, and that's really going to be the key to applying a loose pigment or a loose shadow, is go in small amounts and get it to stay before you start blending. Always use a base. I really like Urban Decay's Primer Potion. So let's start out with a very dark pigment, and this is Urban Decay Rockstar. It does have fallout due to it being loose, and it's a darker color. So if it falls out, you're going to get smudge lines here. A really good idea would to either take a little sponge and hold it under there. You can get a fallout shield. Those are kind of pricey. The best thing to do, just use some Scotch tape. Okay, so I'm going to pick some up on the flat side of this brush. Have that on. And be careful when you tap because it is loose and you might lose some. And being very steady, small amounts at a time, you're going to pick a spot to start. I start in the middle and press it on. And I go over the same spot to get that color to deepen. There's barely any fallout. You're literally packing the color. Let's keep it right on our lid so that we can blend. And keep pressing on that same spot. You're not dragging the brush, you're not sweeping the brush, you're packing it on. You're literally pressing it. And stay close to your eyelid. Don't go like this. Just stay real close and press it on. This way the brush does not pick up any color, does not take off, and we've packed that color on. We have no fallout. Now let's blend. Remember, you're going to switch brushes for this. I'm going to use the e.l.f. blending brush. Here's where your transition color comes. A transition color is going to be what separates and also what eases this lid color into your brow bone color. It usually goes in the socket if you'd like. And it's kind of similar if you're having one flush look. It's going to be sort of similar to that lid color so that the gradient goes from darkest to lightest or vice versa, whatever your look is. I'm going to be using MAC's Satin Taupe for this. It's a purplish taupey color and it is pretty similar to this, but the gradient is different. So I'm going to pick some up on my brush. And again, all shadow has a potential for fallout. Tap some off. And when you're not too sure about blending, always work in small amounts. It's much easier to add than to take away with shadows. Your socket is a part of your eye that goes in. I'm going to start my transition color here. And I'm going to look down, bring it over as far as I want. And I'm going to just lightly blend that pigment and that transition color together and then start bringing it up just into the socket and a little bit on the brow bone. You can bring it up a little higher because then you will have another color there to go into your highlight. And then you can kind of do windshield wiper right up at the brow bone. And you've got that blended. Here's your transition color and then your pigment's right there. Now you can darken that pigment, go back and darken it. Again, it's easier to put back than to take away. Now I'll go back and just press right on that lid. Where I want that pigment. Small amounts. So now you've reinforced that original pigment. Take that same blending brush. Now when you start blending this pigment to that transition color, it's really important how you hold your blending brush. Don't hold it on the side because that's going to start taking away that pigment because you're using the long side. Use the tapered end. So we've got that. Now let's get our brow bone color. For my brow bone color, I'm going to use Shroom from MAC. And I'm going to use that kind of all over brush. And I'm just going to start at my brow. And Shroom does have some fallout. So again, gonna just pack it on. And that's really the key with fallout shadows. Pack first, blend later. You really want to place that color before you start trying to blend it. Okay, now with the same brush, I'm lightly going to blend that transition color. And there you go. Now we're going to take the tape off. And you can go about placing your eyeliner now, your mascara. Remember this step. You want to put tape underneath right here or some sort of fallout guard. And then you want to use the proper tools. That's really important when you're working with specific things like pigments or going for a specific look. And start in small spots and pack and then move on and pack. And you just keep going on until you have the color you want and just keep packing lightly. You don't want to lift that brush too far away from your lid. That's when you start getting fallout. Keep it really local. Pack until that color is what you want. Then you're going to use a transition color so that it looks like it's just going in a nice even gradient. Pick a color that is somewhat similar and a little bit lighter or darker depending on the look to your lid color. And then blend those up. You always want to start really soft, really slow. Then if you need to, you can go ahead and reinforce that color down here and just gently blend so that they go in together. And when you add your brow bone color, make sure that your brow bone color and this transition color blend into each other as well, just lightly sweeping. And there you go. So I hope that this helped those of you who have been asking me to do a video about loose pigments or loose shadows. This is how I've been doing it for a long time, and it really works for me. I hope that it works for you as well. I think that it's the least frustrating way to start in small steps and keep your brush close to the eye. The way you're holding your brush and the way that you make the movements is very important. If you need to, save this video to your favorite so that you can check on it when you go to your own look. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep requesting videos that you'd like to see. I will see you guys later. Bye!